Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another round of Courageous Conversations. I am Sandeep Emmanuel, and today I have with me Pastor Mark Zschech, who just had Irani chai in Hyderabad. and he loved Irani chai because it's the first time he's having. What's your experience of the Irani chai, Pastor Mark?
Oh, I love that. I could have that at least a half a dozen times a year. That's pretty cool. I mean, of course, us Aussies would call that tea with condensed milk. But it's beautiful and sweet, very enjoyable.
Yeah, and Pastor Darlene and Pastor Mark are the global pastors of Hope UC and having churches in Australia, US, and in India. And welcome to India. And I know you've been here many times. What are your first impressions of India?
Well, it's been a couple of years since I've been here, so it's very, last time I was here was just prior to COVID, so it's very great to be back. Unfortunately, it's taken me some time to get back, as like many people, all of our routines of how we're doing life are now coming back up to full steam. So it's great to be in Hyderabad. I love this country, I love this city, and hearing and seeing what God's doing amongst the church here and amongst the people. It's a very energetic country to come to. It just feels like it's going ahead. Recently, we're talking off mic a bit earlier, now in Australia, Indians are the largest group of immigrants coming into Australia. We're very excited about that. Feel very elated. Hopefully now our food culture is improving in Australia and we're having better and better Indian food.
Great. I mean, that's great. I think even in the population-wise and globally, I think India is peak now. I think we are number one.
Yeah.
When it comes to the population of our country compared to the global statistics.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
Yes,
the one quote I love about India is they say it's the largest democracy in the world.
That's right. Yep.
I mean, most people probably can't wrap their heads around that. Every time I say it, it actually really inspires me to think what might come out of this nation in the decades yet to come.
And very interestingly, the most number of, if you look at global statistics, the maximum number of people who speak English in a country, India is number one.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, there are more number of people speaking English in India than in any other country in the world.
Wow.
So that's
I can fit in then.
Absolutely. Friends, today we're going to talk about legacy. This is something that's been on Mark's heart, and he's been he's been driving the conversation around legacy. So we're going to talk about legacy. What does it mean, and what does it mean for us to leave a legacy behind? So Pastor Mark, can you introduce to us the idea, what is legacy and how do you envision it?
Yeah, well, thank you. It is a courageous conversation to have, to talking about legacy. In particular for me, it really, I suppose, spurred on from just very personal experience. Young dad, a couple young children, and living in, at the time, Sydney, very tough city to live in economically. At that time, interest rates were about 18%, very difficult. And I was thinking that in my lifetime, I'm not going to be able to pass anything down to my children. And knowing how we wanted our family to advance, I was really quite confused. I was stressed about this topic. And I was in a church service one morning and I really felt like the Holy Spirit nudged me really about this topic, about, well, what are you going to do? And I really felt compelled to basically do something. And so, of course, knowing, rent was high, expenses were high, what could we do? So what I did is I thought, I went and bought the biggest life insurance policy that I could afford at that time. And I went home to Darlene and I'd said to her, hey, Darlene, we've put legacy in motion today inside our family tree. And it really, I suppose, has now for decades sparked a thought in me that legacy is much more than what we receive. Legacy is much more than what we leave behind. The most important, I think, thought or topic around legacy is, what do we put in motion?
Right.
And so that it outlasts us and hopefully becomes into the generations yet to come. And there's many biblical examples around that. And so to me, legacy is really about what every one of us gets to put in motion, because we're all custodians of the time and the resources that we have right now, but how will we use that so that it actually does good work in the generations yet to come?
Yeah, that's very true, because it's important as to what we leave behind. What are some of the biblical examples that you have seen, and what is close to your heart? What example is close to your heart?
Well, I think one of the great accounts in the Bible is the story of Abram or Abraham in Genesis, where God actually speaks to him directly. He challenges him to leave his family and go on an adventure. He doesn't tell him where the adventure is going to go. He doesn't tell him what the destination is. But he says that if you are willing to go on this adventure, then I will bless you. This is interesting. I'll bless you, and I'll bless all the families on earth through you.
Right.
And so again, for me, this is again speaks to this idea about what we're setting in motion is so important. I mean, the New Testament calls Abraham the father of our faith. So again, if he's our father in the sense of this faith that we hold, well, then we should study his life, the journey that he went on, and how he interacted with God himself. And there's so many points about that little one verse there about what God speaks to Abram, about how I think legacy can apply to us very much still today.
Yeah. I think what you said is so true, because today we are getting so caught up in Lord bless me world, where leaving a legacy is all about, as you said, the promise that Abraham received, that to be a blessing as well. I think the promise comes with a mandate that you're not just blessed for yourself, but also you are supposed to be people who are blessing others. Or through you, the blessing will flow. In your mind, when we look at our global Christian community today, are we falling into a trap of just asking God what we want?
Yeah.
Because that can be a nice thing, right? I mean, we always kind of feel that God should be blessing us, which is so true. But what you're talking about is us not just leaving a legacy for our children, which we generally tend to do, but for what does it look like leaving a legacy for the world or for our community to start off with?
Well, look, you've touched on so many interesting topics that we could go down all sorts of different channels there. But as you said, and I rightly agree with you, is that oftentimes we think about our faith, our relationship with God, rightly so, as a very individualistic spiritual transaction. And there's no doubt everyone has to turn their heart towards God himself. But then the next part of that, I believe, as in Jesus himself reinforced this mandate to say, actually, it's also our relationship with each other. And so again, when you think about that inside a community of faith, again, legacy must be a topic that we talk about. How are we building our communities of faith so they're outlasting me, how they're outlasting my generation, and so that we're setting up the next generation, and not only that one, but even the one behind it. The Bible clearly teaches all of us all the time. Don't just think about yourself. Don't think about the next generation, but actually think about your children's children. And this is a very important logic. And so much so that, I mean, I think that when you watch and study families that transfer wealth, the successful global families through history have been able to do that across 4 generations. Most people peter out at the 3rd generation. Right. But so then how do we do that spiritually? How do we actually take this revelation of a relationship with God himself, where he would call us his friend, which is an amazing thought in itself. And how do we actually set that up so that it's not only our children, not only our children's children, but the generation after that? Again, what are we putting in motion? So that's where I think we all have to carry the responsibility of building healthy communities of faith so that we can express ourselves in that way.
Yeah. I like the word that you used, outlasts me. Build something that outlasts.
Yeah.
What would be some of the first steps to think or do something like that?
Well, again, if we go back to Abraham's instructions from God, number one, God spoke to him directly the first time in his family tree. That's recorded in the Old Testament, where God spoke to Abraham himself. And basically with this idea, I think that we need to put the king and his kingdom first in our life. Again, for Abram to go on this spiritual adventure, which we now know about, He had to leave his family, his relatives, where they worshipped something like 200 plus gods. And God was calling him out of there to say, just worship the one true God, Yahweh. And he had to then to lay all of that aside, all of his history, his legacy that he had experienced, and to make God number one. So again, I think if you're going to put any sort of legacy in motion, the best thing that you can do for yourself, for your family, is to, again, make God number one and make his kingdom number one. The church, that's what this is what we're a part of globally.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question from a perspective of some of the global countries, where some countries are financially not well-to-do, right? So the idea about leaving a legacy behind, is it has to do something only with money and resources, or is there something else that we need to keep thinking about that everybody can do?
Yeah. Look, I think money is an easy way out of legacy. I think the tough things are about our value system, the way that we orientate and treat other relationships in our lives. Because again, money seems to make things transactional.
Right.
I mean, look, money definitely makes things better. There's no doubt about it. But it's not the highest form of any relationship. And again, I think that whatever we can, legacy happens in many ways. Many people receive a legacy in terms of photos from their family that have been passed down through the generations, through maybe it's a piece of real estate and it's a building that we go, that's where that church started, and what an amazing legacy. For Darlene and I, we received a tea set from her grandparents, which is a really treasured item sitting in our cupboard. Now, it's beautiful, and whenever we think about it, and dare I say we might even use it every now and again, an old English tea set, we then often will think about her grandparents and what great godly people they were, and the things that they put in motion that from Darlene's side of the family we're still receiving the benefits of today. So yes, of course, money is powerful, but it's not the most powerful thing.
Yeah, I like what you said about values. Like, values are also important that we need to pass on. I guess with that also comes faith, right?
Yeah.
Introducing our children and helping them grow in the ways of the Lord.
Yeah.
That itself, I think, is a huge contribution that we make in leaving a legacy. So what are some of the challenges or hurdles that you see people face whenever they want to think about leaving a legacy behind?
Look, one of the things that Abraham had to do, or Abraham, is when God called him out and said, you're going to need to leave your father's situation. So you could imagine there was a certain amount of comfort around that. He grew up in that area. He grew up under his father's wing. He knew how society worked. I don't know what the situation, the Bible doesn't really tell us, but you get the inference that Abram was a man of means. His father obviously was a man of means. So what he had to do, which again, it's a two-part step. Abram, to leave a legacy, to go on the journey that God had for him, had to leave the environment that was comfortable, which is a big mindset thought in itself. But two, not only that, he had to then also choose a journey of discomfort, the unknown. So again, choosing to leave comfort and choosing to embrace discomfort. This is how I believe legacy can be built in our lives. Most of us always choose, I need another cushion for the chair, I want more comfort, I don't want any risk, I don't want any unknowns, tell me all about what's going to happen over the next week or the next month, don't surprise me with anything. Yeah. Those are all discomfort things. Yet, but then the psalmist writes about Abram's journey and says, it was a journey into the unknown. There was no map, there was no traffic lights, there was no roads, there was no worn path. He was literally going into an area on a journey that no one had ever done before. He had not been on this part of the world before. So again, choosing this idea of discomfort which, for us today, we might call that risk. We might call that the unfamiliar. And again, yet all of us, our human nature wants us to make our faith known. We want the service at our church to be the same way every week. We need all of our spiritual smorgasbord to be safe and sure. Yet that's not how God works. God is the God of the unknown, the mysterious, the new. And I think we need to get an appetite if we're truly going to be legacy people and put things in motion, feeling very comfortable with the uncomfortable.
So if I may dare to say, like, if you're feeling very comfortable in your life, that means you're not a legacy person. But so true in what you mentioned. I think the whole thing about being adventurous and living a life filled with faith is so important, because I like that word that you use, God of the unknown. I mean, that's so true, because there's so much of things that we tend to get scared about, right? Like sometimes you're so worried about the paycheck, to sometimes whether we're going to get money or not. But I think to be people thinking about legacy, I think without God, I think it's going to be impossible, the way you defined it, because it's always about moving in the unknown. And I think that's going to be the big faith step that we all need to start.
For sure. When the disciple was in the boat with Jesus, and the big storm come up, Jesus is walking on water towards the boat, and he says, "Come." So he had to choose to leave the comfort of that boat, the safety of that boat, to step out on the water. He had to choose not only to leave comfort, but choose to embrace discomfort, risk.
Right.
And again, we don't talk about that in our faith journeys, about what steps will we take, what will we do that might be risky. Because again, we often then think that I won't take a risk because I may embarrass myself, it may not work out, it we might fall flat on our face. But I go, well, if God's called you and he's the one drawing you on this adventure, well, then the only one that can be embarrassed if it doesn't work out is him. So, you've heard this saying before, that God, you need to show up. Otherwise, in this situation, be it whatever the thing that we're believing for, if you don't show up, you're going to be seriously embarrassed, because it's not me, because this is your deal. All I'm doing is being a vessel on the journey of your adventure.
Right. I like the way you're putting thing on God, because he's working in our lives. And I guess it's something that we need to do. Quick, another thought that I wanted to check with you is that in your life, in your life over the years, I know you've been driving productions to music to media. You've been the person, the whole that word. Have you faced challenges at times where you were not sure whether the steps you're taking are from God or not? Was there a time where you felt unsure about it?
Many times indeed, and still do. I go, well, and it's a great question. I remember as a young man, thinking, God, I'll do anything you want me to do, but you've just got to tell me. The challenge with that proposition is it becomes paralyzing. It means that I won't take any adventure step forward until God actually clearly lays the path out. So sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes God's just saying, take a move. Whether you go to the left or whether you go to the right, I can bless you. And I believe in that scripture. He'll turn everything, all things, to his good. So again, I don't know that there is a perfect, predestined path for all of us to take. There's no doubt that we all face challenges. Even Adam and Eve faced a challenge. Inside this so-called Garden of Eden, God put an enemy. And I believe he did that for a reason that was to help them overcome. Of course, they didn't overcome. We inherited sin from them because of what they chose. Right. So again, in the same way, we've all got challenges. You've got challenges. I've got challenges. Everyone out there has got challenges. Those, I believe, are opportunities for God to show up and believe and put our best energies forward. My responsibility, the way I always think about it, is I've just got to do my best.
Right.
I've got to put my best energy, my best effort. I've got to posture myself in the right way, treat the relationships in my life with the best that I can do. And then I believe God will actually direct my steps.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to kind of remind the audience that if you just heard what Mark said, like if there are challenges that you're facing, tough times that you're facing in your life, they're all opportunities for God to show up. And I guess when we are facing challenges, I think it's an indication that we can just wait for God to show up. I think that's a great opportunity that is there. Pastor Mark, one of the things is always, you've been a pastor, you've been pastoring churches. Did you see the believers community in the church or in the churches all across globally? Do you see them as people who are concerned about others? Or do you see them most of the time falling into the trap that many of us fall into about all being about ourselves?
Yeah. Look, that's our sin nature, is to always think about ourselves. What about me?
Right.
What about my calling, my gift, all those things? I've always subscribed. I've got lots of dreams about what I'd like to achieve in my life, but whenever I've surrendered to those and and actually started to solve other people's problems, it's amazing to me how God rearranges everything so that those dreams actually come to fruition. So even though I might lay them down on the altar, as to say, that expression, even though they're dear to me, I'd love it if God would do this in my life and this in my life. Whenever I've surrendered those, it's just amazing to me how he brings them to pass. And again, that's that beautiful story about Isaac and, putting his son at the altar, the thing that he absolutely loved, by surrendering that to God in that act. Then it's amazing how God gave him back the thing that was most precious. I just think that if Christians, people in churches, inside communities of faith, if they could actually, die to that flesh inside them rather than them asking God to meet their needs all the time, and actually have a posture of serving other people's needs, I think they would be amazed about the miracles that will come towards them. And all of a sudden they'll sit back and reflect and go, oh my goodness, God has just given me this opportunity. It's something I've always wanted to do, needed to do, loved to do, and now I'm doing it.
Great. Finally, any last thoughts that you have on encouraging our audience about leaving a legacy?
Yeah.
Anything else that you have on your heart that you want to share?
Yeah, thank you.
With our audience.
Thank you. Well, thanks again for the privilege of speaking today. Courageous Conversations. I love the topic and the title. I think, again, just to probably take that last bit of that scripture where God was speaking to Abram and he said, hey, look, I'll make you famous. He wasn't talking about being Instagram famous, but he was talking about, I'll bless, again, the nations of the world through you.
Right.
Such a powerful thought. I mean, the leading up to that verse, he says, I'll make you, which actually implies and talks to a process. And again, a legacy is a process. It's not a switch. It's not something that you go, yes, today I've put legacy in motion and now I've done that topic, I can move on to something else. I think there's always things for us to be doing in terms of this building a legacy. Because today people out there might be thinking about, oh, well, I can put this in motion. But once you put that in motion, that's not the end. There might be some more things to do and some more things to do. So I would just encourage people to say, legacy in my thinking is an evolving topic. And I think it's a powerful topic because for some reason, as Pentecostals anyway, we used to think, I just got to get saved. I've just got to get pay my tithes and offerings and go to church every week, and then everything's sorted. And I'll just wait for Jesus Christ to return, and we're good. But I just think, what happens if he doesn't come back for another 500 years or 1,000 years? What then? Well, what did we actually do and put in motion that made the church, his bride, better, more beautiful, and bigger? Because I think that's part of our legacy as well. How do we help his bride, the church, be the best that it can be? And so my encouragement to everyone out there is just very much get involved in your local church. Really serve that pastor, serve the people around you, and again, believe God that whatever dreams that you have, that He will be the one who brings them together. And don't be too impatient with that, and actually trust God that across the breadth of your life, that all things will work together for good.
Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pastor Mark, for sparing your time for this conversation, and I'm sure our audience is blessed. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Mark talking about legacy.